The best thing I think we can do is to find stillness, because I think great action comes from just that beingness and just allowing ourselves to really be still. It's the righteous action, just showing up every day, spending time in your practices every day. Your life will change.
From To Be Magnetic, this is the Expanded Podcast with your host, Lacy Phillips. As the leading destination for neural manifestation, we dispel the woo-woo in order to help you create real, tangible results based on neuroplasticity, psychology, epigenetics, and energetics. Our goal is to normalize the practice of manifestation and empower you to get into the driver's seat of your life in order to manifest the experiences, relationships, and things that most align with your authenticity. Part of our manifestation process entails expanding past your limiting subconscious beliefs. Therefore, by tuning into this podcast with interviews from experts, thought leaders, spiritual teachers, scientists, and those with neural manifestation success stories, you're starting the process of expanding your subconscious in order to see to believe that anything you desire is possible. And by pressing play, the process begins.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Expanded. We have an incredible guest today. It is one of Lacy's dear friends, Kimberly Snyder. I'm sure you guys have heard of her before. Kimberly is the founder of Solluna, a holistic lifestyle brand. She's the author of 5 books, including 3 New York Times bestsellers, including The Beauty Detox and Radical Beauty. She co-authored a book with Deepak Chopra. She's a speaker, nutritionist, certified yoga teacher, meditation teacher, and truly one of the sweetest humans ever. I think you guys are going to get so much out of their conversation. Lacy and Kimberly really dive into what that self-care practice looks like for them and how they've cultivated that over the years and how they're really implementing some of the spiritual teachings that they've picked up throughout their life to really put into practice now and kind of radically accept all of the emotions and processing all of those pieces as we go through life. Kimberly really touches on the importance of nourishing everything, mind, body, and soul, and how all of the different pillars of our being have to work in tandem with each other in order to have that inner peace within us. So without further ado, enjoy.
And now, a word from our partners.
As you know, we are huge fans of Blue Blocks over at TBM, and I'm starting to think we're having a manifestation relationship with them because every time I'm thinking of getting a new cool product, somehow Blue Blocks already reads my mind and knows the type of thing that I'm anticipating needing. They have really become the one-stop shop for so many biohacking things. They are obviously the leader in blue light protection, but now they're even starting to move into the EMF protection space as well. I've been reading a lot about 5G and EMFs and things that can kind of come off of our devices and disrupt our bodies. And there's a lot of studies around on this, and I'm kind of someone who doesn't want to go down the rabbit hole too much because it might freak me out from any piece of technology going on. But I'm definitely curious as I spend so much time on my phone and my laptop, different ways that I can protect myself going forward. One of the new products that they have recently released is their anti-radiation laptop mat. This is a little leather vegan mat that has 4 layers of anti-radiation technology built within it. It blocks 99% of low-frequency ELF, wireless radiation, including the 5G spectrum. It also significantly reduces heat from reaching your lap when using your laptop on your lap. And if you're like me, sometimes working from home, I'll put my laptop on my legs or on my chest, or if I'm really lounging, I'll lay it on my stomach and probably hurt my spine, but work in odd positions. And so now I'll put the anti-radiation laptop mat underneath, and it protects me from any of the damaging effects from my laptop. The other thing I'll use it for is at night when I'm going to bed, I'll put my iPhone on it. They also have an EMF harmonizing sticker that you can put directly on your cell phone to help harmonize that. I'm in the process of manifesting my new phone upgrade. So once I do that, I will get the harmonizing sticker for my new phone. But for now, I'm putting my phone onto the laptop mat. And that way, if I need to, grab my phone in the middle of the night or it's right next to me, at least it's protecting some of the radiation or EMF that can be coming off of there as well. I think it's also really important to notice where you're resting some of these technology pieces. Like, for example, when I'm resting it on my lap or on my waist laying down on the couch, that's directly on my reproductive organs and a lot of the most important organs in my body. And as I am getting older and want kids one day, and this is just one extra layer of protection, really easy way to just protect those organs, make sure I'm not having bad effects from any radiation or EMF or 5G issues. And I've really been noticing a huge difference in my energy levels. It's such a cool way to start to work into different ways you can protect yourself really easily from all of the radiation and 5G that's going to continue to grow and emit in the world. Like I said, they also have the EMF harmonizing sticker, which you can stick on your phone, and it will help neutralize the EMF and radiation coming off of your phone when using it, which is definitely something that will be helpful. And they also release anti-radiation air tubes, which is the headphones. So if you'd like to learn more about the science behind this or any of their products, make sure to go to blueblocks.com/pages/magnetic and use code magnetic, all caps, MAGNETIC for 15% off. Again, that's magnetic, MAGNETIC, all caps for 15% off your order. Enjoy. We are huge fans of Beekeepers Natural, and we are so excited to continuing partnering with Beekeepers as podcast sponsors. One product I know I've mentioned before, but I think it's so perfect, is our Bee Smart Brain Fuel. So this is the supplement I probably have recommended the most to people because whenever anyone is having brain fog, they just got over being sick or they didn't get a lot of sleep the night before, maybe they were just traveling and they had some jet lag and brain fog, this is the best thing I have found to help clear it. It has all organic royal jelly, ginkgo biloba, and other natural ingredients inside of it, which really support neurotransmission within the brain. So the royal jelly, aside from having tons of minerals and vitamins, also supports acetylcholine to help support a healthy brain. It has nootropics, an herb to enhance brain function by supporting the brain's ability to learn and retain information, and ginkgo biloba, which is an adaptogenic herb that contains antioxidants that help boost blood flow to the brain, which nourishes your hungry brain cells. This is my go-to product for any support in the brain before I'm podcasting. If I'm needing extra support and really wanting to knock out something in our deep imaginings, I will use this alongside of it to help create new neural pathways with the supplementation while also doing the reprogramming work. It is fantastic. I like to have it on hand for those days that I wake up with not a lot of sleep, for when I'm traveling, and a coffee is not the ideal remedy. This is a complete game changer. So if you would like to try some of the Bee Smart Brain Fuel or any other of the Beekeeper Naturals products, you can use code TBM at checkout for 15% off.
All right, on to the episode. Welcome, Kim. How are you?
Oh, hi, Lacy, my love. Happy New Year. It's so great to chat. I don't know how long we can say Happy New Year for, but I'd say to February.
I know I was just pondering that yesterday because I've been saying it to my neighbors. And I was like, wait, how long is this socially acceptable? Wait, so you just got back from your land in Kauai where you
Yes.
took a pause for 3 weeks?
So it is amazing timing with this book launch. I've never been able to pause right in the middle because
Mm.
it's a January book release. So I just felt like, I could keep pushing, I could keep doing more stuff, but the best thing I think we can do is to find stillness sometimes, because I think great action comes from just that beingness and just allowing ourselves to really be still. So, Lace, over the past 3 weeks, we were on the land in Kauai, and there's this part of the land I can't wait for you to come visit.
I'm like, packing my bags.
It's a forest. It's these Norfolk, I think they're called Norfolk firs, came over hundreds of years ago from Papua New Guinea. So there's these 200, 300-foot enormous trees. It's the part of the land that I just want to be in the most. So I meditate in there. I play with our kids in there. And I just spent hours kind of just being, contemplating. It was a real gift.
Wow. Ever since you told us about, we were all sitting together, Jordan, you, Krista, and Lily and I, and you were like, we just put an offer on a place in Kauai. You're like, what did you say about you and your husband, which I loved? You said, we're really not spontaneous, but you guys just are action oriented.
Yes. So what happened was he had this idea. He had this spanda, divine inspiration, to get more land, and he wanted to, have our kids grow up with more expanded area. And he really is into farming and just growing things. So what happened is we looked at a piece of land. We looked at a farm in Santa Barbara. It was just so clear to me. I said, no, looks like where we live in California, except it's colder and it's windier.
And you don't like that, which you shared.
I don't like that. That's not my constitution. It doesn't feel good to my vata. We were lying in bed, we were having a glass of wine, and I said, hey, if I could have anything without restriction, if I dare to dream, if I really want to create what I want, it would be tropical. I'm half Filipina. I don't know if it's, part of my blood, but I just feel really open and expansive and abundant in tropical land. So then I was just kind of reading something, and he was over there on his phone. And I said, what about Kauai? I've been there in the past. It's American. So it's, we don't have to deal with political instability. So he pulls up on his phone this, oh my gosh, Lacy, if you saw, it was this really ugly picture. And it was of this dilapidated work shed. But what caught his eye was that it was 5 acres and it was in the jungle. And so we kept scrolling the pictures, and 99% of people go by that past that first picture. But it was incredible. And there was this stream that connects to the waterfall. There was this big pasture, 3 acres. So we were on a plane 5 days later with the kids looking at it. We looked at a couple other places, but we were really clear what we wanted. We wanted jungle. We wanted it to not be manicured. We wanted this wild piece of land. And so we get there, and the second I pulled in, I'm not good with poker face. I just felt it in my body. I said, this is our land.
Wow.
So I was trying to keep it cool. We met with a realtor, and then the owner was there, and I was just, everything inside me was like, yes, yes, yes. So long story short, by that day, the end of that day, we put in an offer. And then we were told that there was another offer over asking, all cash.
Oh, wow.
But I just felt like it was our place, Lace. I didn't stress. I just felt it. And we waited. And I don't know if that other offer was even a real thing. Sometimes
they always say that. I tell my friends, there's always another offer, and it's cash.
Another offer. So they didn't counter. We waited like 10 days, and then they came back and they countered finally. And then we got an escrow. We closed 30 days later.
Amazing.
So here we are.
Oh, incredible. Well, I have to start this by telling you that I think I was 27, maybe 26 even. And I was working at the Laugh Factory on Sunset as a waitress at like the depths of my lows. And one of my coworkers, Julianne, who I still love to this day, came in, and she was eating raw carrots sliced up and something else. And we were like, what are you doing, Julianne? And she was like, I just read this book called The Beauty Detox Solution. And we were all like, tell us more. And so I got it. I even got my ex, and we were doing the glowing green smoothie every day.
God.
I mean, followed it to a T for quite some time. But I have to say, even more important, that it was a launch for me because, I mean, I've always been into holistic living. Even I always like to say when I was an actress, you know, in my early 20s, I would be reading sides for a pilot, but at a raw food restaurant, way more curious about the food. But something about this time in my life is when everything sort of came together, and I have to give you credit that you were definitely an essence that helped me launch my first blog that was about holistic living.
Wow. Oh, Lace, that makes me so happy. I feel so honored to be part of your journey. You never
Yes.
told me that.
I know. I've been waiting for this conversation to, you know, declare this, but such a big deal. Like, even if I were to text my ex now, we had so many different, not pet names, but personal things we would call, you know, like your immunity tea that you
Oh,
make.
come
Like, we had
on.
names for all of this stuff and, you know, jokes. We'd be like, did you have your GGS this morning? You know, so I just had to
Wow.
share that with you. You're such a big part of the journey.
Oh my gosh. Well, that is so incredible. I had no idea. And, you know, it just reinforces how connected we are, how everything is, because that book came out, literally, that was my first book. So that was in 2011, 10 years ago. So it's been
Wow.
6 books in 10 years. And, you know, then we just kind of migrated through friends of friends. Now we live in the same area. Where we are, life just evolves.
It's actually cute. A story just came to my mind as you're talking about this. There's another one of the waitresses at the Laugh Factory, Daniela, who also, you know, imbibed in all of your amazing stuff. But she said, when you first opened your juice spot on Melrose way back when, she was like, I was in there and Kimberly came in. She's like a celebrity now. I remember it was so I'm just so proud of you from that point to this new book, which we're definitely going to get into. But I just had to share it because I think that that's really fun. What a big part of the journey. And yeah, that we have totally, you know, landed in this similar space, and that, you know, you have been a mom for a bit now, but I like to say your feet were on the ground again with Moses. I feel like I'm just getting there while I was getting ready for Teddy.
Oh my gosh. And Teddy is so gorgeous. And this whole journey, but I have to tell you before we move on from that, a funny story about the first book, because you know, you bring that up to me and I think, wow, like 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years, a lot can happen in 10 years, first of all. And for me, I had, you know, just gotten back from backpacking. And first of all, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life for a really long time. I thought I was going to be a doctor. I went in with a partial science and math scholarship. And then I interned in a hospital and that didn't work. So I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I was a seeker. I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of bloating. I was uncomfortable in my body. So I started backpacking. And I ended up going for 3 years. I talk about this in the book. But the reason this is significant is, you know, a lot happened, especially in India, which we'll talk about when we talk about with the new book. But I got back to the United States. I got moved to New York. And I had this burning desire to write a book. It was just inside of me. It was what I really wanted to create. And so I wrote this manuscript called Catching the Fire. And that's what my first book was meant to be. It was a travel memoir, and it had some of the teachings from this new book. And so at the same time, I was starting my free blog, which back then was KimberlySnyder.net. And I was going back and I was teaching yoga asanas, and I was going back to nutrition school. And then HarperCollins came along. It was starting to grow. I was starting to be a regular guest on Good Morning America. I was working with these celebrities that found my free blog. And I showed her my manuscript, and she looked at it and she said, well, your blog, the food and the recipe stuff is really taking off. So why don't we write a food book first and we'll write this book second? So that first book, The Beauty Detox Solution, just took me in this direction. It grew so much. The second book was about food, but the third book, which was called Beauty Detox Power, started to come back into chakras and spirituality. The fourth book I wrote with Deepak Chopra, and that was Ayurveda and spirituality. And then the fifth book was a hybrid. This book kind of reminds me of what I wanted to write about first. But the depth, Lacy, over the past 10 years, so much has happened personally with me. I've been, you know, my rock bottom places, you know, some of the stories I share about in the book. And, you know, I'm glad the timing didn't work out back then, because it's all about timing, you know, as well. So here I am. I'm ready to share. It's all in this book now.
Well, what I love about what you're saying too, and that I don't know where I heard this, but I think, don't they say statistically you become an expert within 10 years at, if you're playing golf or whatnot.
Oh, interesting. I never heard that timeline.
Yeah. And in fact, there was this intuitive, we just had it, my Yule party, White Feathers, his name, we can link his contact. He's the one everybody raved about. But what did he tell me in a reading that I did with him? Something about that, like an expert in 10 years and that you're coming into your experthood. And so it's really
Mm.
beautiful that 10 years later, the release is here and you're grounded in it. That makes sense to me. Totally.
This book is so raw and real and open. And if I tried to write this book 10 years ago, it wouldn't have had the same energy.
Mm,
And,
yeah.
some of the things that have happened, I lost my mom really suddenly about 4 years ago. And then it was after that that I sort of woke up. I was already doing my practice. I was already following these teachings, but I started to, you follow things when things are going well. You can kind of dip in and out and like, oh, I'm going to just sleep in a little bit. I'm going to skip my meditation practice today. But when you're at rock bottom, that's when you believe in your practices. You follow them or not. They're like your lifeline, right?
Totally. Yep. Absolutely.
So then I lost my mom. It was out of nowhere. Her cancer diagnosis came on Valentine's Day, and then she was gone by the end of March. My
Oh,
son, you met Emerson, my older son wasn't yet one. And then I was like, Lacy, I was like, what the F is going on? I looked at my life and I thought, this isn't really what I want. So I was in this relationship. It was with Emerson's dad. And I just said, this isn't the closeness. This isn't, it's not for me. So it was in that period that I ended up moving out on my own. So I was, new mom, just lost my mom, single mom. And I met with this monk at the Self-Realization Fellowship, which is Yogananda's organization, the great yoga guru who brought yoga to the West. And he said, treat your home like an ashram for 5 months. So sort of like what we were saying in Hawaii, but a much longer time. I just got still. I went into these scriptures and these teachings. I read thousands of pages. I meditated. I didn't go out much. But wow, did I start to rise up from that period with a lot more strength, grit, rawness. So that was, this book is part of that emergence period. And then I found, some months later when I started to kind of go out and explore, that's when I ran into my future husband, John. And I wasn't really looking for anybody, and neither was he. But it was so strong, our connection.
like Kauai.
Like Kauai. And we just moved, we moved very, which seems like quickly, you and I know that time and space are, funny things. They can expand and contract. It's not really linear. So it didn't feel like a rush to us, but we were married in like 2 months.
Wow. That's incredible.
Yeah, it gets deeper every day. So this love is possible.
It really, yeah, you guys are incredible. I love your energy together. He's such a gift. I just think he's wonderful.
Oh, yes, he loves you too.
Oh,
I'm just reflecting now about, this book for me is sharing my full playbook. And like I was saying, 10 years ago, when I first had this genesis of this idea, I didn't have this rawness, this trust. I think I was, just so in my ego. This book is essentially about really living life from the true self. So the ego is, fear-based. The ego is always looking at how things may look to other people. The ego is always trying to play it safe. So when I met John, I was in this place of just fullness and wholeness. And so I look back at, all these other parts of my life, including relationships, and I look at how I blocked myself in different ways. I look at how fear made me in some ways pick partners that I wouldn't get that close to. So I didn't have the closeness I wanted, but then there was this fear that maybe if people got too close to me, they wouldn't love me. I wasn't good enough. So then, I look at how transformed my life is now, where I am so grateful for this soulmate love. I'm so grateful for this depth. And, from this place, I'm so excited to share these teachings. I think they're really needed out in the world today. I think they're really applicable for modern life. Yeah, here I am. This book kind of wrote itself. I wasn't planning on writing a book. It came down when I was 34 weeks pregnant, actually, with Mosey.
which is just mind-blowing to me. I'm like, you had to channel this. There's no way I could have done something like that during pregnancy. I'm just so floored by that.
Well, I didn't actually write it when I was pregnant. I had the idea, Lace, and I was like, oh my God, I'm trying to slow down right now. But it came down and it was so clear. It was like lightning. And so I didn't know what to do. I reached out to Deepak and I told him my idea. And he's like, oh, this book belongs with Hay House. And so he connected me with them. And the next thing I know, Reed Tracy, the president, said to me, well, what's your book about? And I told him. And then a few days later, I was presenting it over Zoom. I wrote a sample chapter and then another Zoom. And then I think I signed my book deal 3 days before Moses was born.
Wow.
And then I waited that full over 40-day period. I waited to 60 days and then I started writing.
Wow. That's just, I mean, even me, I'm like, month 9 and I'm like, I can't even remember words when I'm trying to speak. How did you do this? That's incredible. Well, I know that the burning question people have on their minds because we ask everyone. And I know that you're not deep in this because we've discussed this before, but we can all guess just by even looking at your Instagram, I feel that you're an Aquarius sun. Do you know your moon and rising?
I don't, honey. I really connect with Indian philosophy and Vedic.
Mm-hmm. Maybe people will be interested in your Vedic for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have my whole chart. It's been a couple years. In Western astrology, well, and I know you are a big astrology expert, but I am Aquarius. I don't know. I just don't know that much about Western. What I have read about Aquarius, I feel like I really am Aquarius.
You are. I feel like you're like a double. One day we're going to have to figure it out because you're so all the things. You're just so dreamy and airy and spiritual and light and bubbly.
Like the collective.
Very much so. Very much so. Even the way you resonate with food and stuff, you're just very, very Aquarian, which I love. And anybody who's curious, her husband's sun sign is a Cancer. We know that.
Oh my God. So I was going to say, what the very little that I know, I've looked up, where it's like you're this and your partner's that. Like that when I've looked, Aquarius and Cancers don't usually go together. And some of the things they say about Cancer really apply to him. He's a softie inside. He's like this big dude.
He's like a bear.
He's a bear. He's completely tattooed from the neck down. He has a gold grill in his teeth.
It's amazing.
In the beginning, it felt like we were, quote, opposites, but it never felt that way to me from the heart space. But, there are moments where I think you tell me if this is right, Lacy, my Aquariusness, I'm very independent and I'm with the kids and him a lot, but I also need my time.
Same.
I have my cave down here. I need a lot of time to meditate. I need a lot of time to reflect. And sometimes whispering.
Yeah.
I'm like, sometimes I feel like I have a third child.
Yeah.
Because I spend all the time with the kids, I do the bedtime, and then I'm like, oh, I get some space. And he's like, well, what about time with your husband now? He's got this he really wants a lot of me. So I would say that's something we work out in our relationship.
With Emerson, he's an Aries, if I'm correct.
Yes.
So Teddy's an Aries, and she has such, I don't say this in the way of sexist, but I've noticed this between other babies I've seen. She has such boy energy. Like she goes and gets it and is after it. And I'll see a lot of other little babies, namely girls, and they're and I don't want to categorize people. These are just the babies I've seen around her recently, but they're so gentle and, calm. And she's like, rah. And it's
Aries.
Aries, joke. Right? Did you have that with Emerson as well?
Yes, he is very fiery, and Moses is Gemini. And so he is very sweet. And I don't know what the characteristics of Gemini are that much, but he is gentle. And, even the way he plays, he's very rambunctious and it's very physical. So it's interesting. And, I have a question for you, Lace, because I don't know this, but someone told me once that with astrology, it's not just when you're born, but it's the month in which you're conceived. That influences your astrology. It's the month that you come into the womb.
Wow. I mean, I've heard little things of that. I've never gone too far into it. And I think that's so fascinating, especially with someone like Teddy, who we ended up having to do IVF. I'm so curious because obviously when you're doing IVF, we got multiple embryos, and so and I'm sure all of it colors, right? Like the moment that you're conceived, as well as the moment that you come earthside. I'm sure it's all colored in. And I wish I were more expert enough to know, but I'm curious to see now with the next baby, energetically their differences and stuff, because that would make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, so you'll have to see with the next baby, just note the month that you do the IVF.
I will, because basically, yeah, I'll have to note that, back to when, because it's so wild and modern and nuts that basically I just have like, I know we're going to do a little boy that's just waiting for
Oh,
us.
wow.
Isn't that just crazy? It's so crazy.
Wow.
And you might be private about this right now, but are you guys thinking to maybe call in another little spirit?
I would love to call in another spirit. I've been so busy with the two little
Yes.
ones and the work and the book. So we're thinking, sometime in the next year after the
Yeah.
book launch and, when things feel more settled. And honestly, first I was like, oh, I'm ready to get pregnant again. And then things got really busy and it got crazy with COVID and, having them both at home. But I like a little bit of space between them. I mean, there's
Yeah, you do.
4 years. And then really love enjoying where Moses is now. He's almost 18 months. And just like this period, it's so special, early childhood. And then we'll have the space and then the next baby will come. So that feels good to me.
I love that. Well, like, how do you find the time? Because for anybody listening, like, I have so much support. It's almost ridiculous. You've been to the house and simply, I think mostly because of adrenal stuff that I go through. Like, I have very little energy, but at your place, you are with the kids most of the time. Obviously, your oldest goes to school, but with Moses, you're hands-on all day, which is, incredible. And I know most mothers, that's the case, or a lot of parents, And so how do you find the time to do all of the work you do, or like make the healthy food that you're like, what is going on there?
So, first of all, I'll say I didn't know what kind of mother I was going to be. I think, like most first time mothers, I was really focused on the birth. I don't know how it was for you, but you're
No,
like,
I was all post birth, because it is interesting. Most of my friends are focused on the birth. I'm like, I know that's going to happen, but I want
right.
to know what's going to happen
Oh,
after.
interesting. Well, I was walking around with this huge ball in my belly, and I was thinking, how is this thing going to come out of me?
Yeah.
So I didn't really know, and this is really interesting. I got all the books. I'm a big researcher in my life, and I write all my own books. So I was like, of course I'm going to get books. But then I started to read these baby books, and I couldn't do it, Lacy. I don't know. It just didn't resonate. I don't know. I was like, I got this, like instinctually. So then Emerson was born, and right from the beginning, it was clear to me, when you look at the types of moms, I am an attachment parent, meaning he was completely on my body. We slept together. I would do podcasts and he'd be strapped to me. I'd be working. He napped on me. He never napped in his crib. And same thing with Moses, like we are just together. So, and I was also at a point in my career, Emerson's 5 years old. Like I do have a really great team as well. So I was able to work around that. So since then, podcasts are only during nap time or now, when Emerson's in school or after bedtime. I'm fortunate. I have really great help at home as well. I have a housekeeper. I have, assistants, just people helping with the stuff that's not kids or work. And so I am always with them. And when I'm not, and then I think about how did I write this book? And a lot of it did happen at night. So I'm writing in between these times. I know my priorities. It's my family first, and then it's the books and Solluna, my brand. And so because of that, I have really great communication with my team. I communicate a lot to them. I outsource a lot. Like I said, at home, I outsource a lot. I say no a lot. I've gotten really focused about what I will and will not do. I get really focused about interviews. I used to say yes to everything and who I want to have conversations with, like you, of course. And so that becomes the priority. And the other thing is, I don't have a lot of, quote, free time.
Yeah.
I don't see friends all the time. As you know, we've been trying to get together for a few weeks, like the four of us, our little friend group. And it happens. And when it does, it's full quality. I'm there, I'm present, but it's not all the time. And I also don't own a TV. I don't watch TV. And also Miss Elena, our housekeeper, now she has my recipes. She makes the food for us. So it's pared down and it's this focus of kids, family, work. And then, of course, play dates, there's ways to combine kids with seeing friends. That's why I do see friends more now with children. So, it's not easy. We all have to figure out the working mom thing, but it's enormously satisfying, as you know.
So I'm quickly interrupting this episode to invite you, if you're ready to start your manifestation journey, or if anything you've heard in our manifestation episodes has piqued your interest, to begin. We have a la carte workshops in everything from the basics bundle, which is what we recommend to everyone who starts. It's the formula that actually teaches you how to manifest, unblocked inner child, and unblocked shadow. We also have a la carte workshops on love and money. But the real gem is the Pathway membership because it encompasses every single workshop we have. It's a year-long membership with full access to the few a la carte offerings we have and exclusive workshops not available anywhere else, such as the daily practice, which is what everybody in the Pathway uses, hopefully at least 3 times a week to daily, in order to truly create the new neural pathways that one needs in order to manifest, and houses the library of our deep imaginings, which is our unique hypnosis process that allows you to get into your subconscious and overwrite those old neural pathways, creating the new ones. You can use our special code EXPANDED, all caps, EXPANDED, to receive $20 off your first a la carte workshop purchase or $20 off your first month of the Pathway. Again, that's all caps, EXPANDED, EXPANDED. Okay, now back to the episode. And this starts to get into the book and your practices. What does your daily self-care look like? How to eat? Are you still following, the same practices? And then also your spiritual practice, which this book very much gets into.
So my lifestyle that I teach is centered around what we call the 4 cornerstones of true wellness and true beauty. So they're food, body, emotional well-being, and spiritual growth. And as I mentioned, when I started out, I hadn't defined this. So I started working with celebrities. The first celebrity found my site, and I was never trying to be this, celebrity nutritionist, celebrity person working with them. But it was part of the karma, I guess. It was part of the path. I never even watched the movies I worked on. But there was a good 5 years of my career where I was traveling around the world with them and just being with them, helping them feel their best. And so outwardly, the way the studios would put me on the billing was, celebrity nutritionist. So it was like this food became this outward part of my work that I was known for. But it was never about the food, Lacy. It was never just about the food. I would say the food was about 15% of it. It was always these cornerstones. So food is obviously the fuel that we put in our body. Body is everything besides food. So it's the way that we exercise, the yoga asanas, the supplements we take, the sleep, the quality of our sleep. And then the third cornerstone is emotional well-being. So this was a big one, as you can imagine, with clients, processing, digesting our emotions, introspecting, coming back to our center, journaling, all these very rich, big cornerstone. It's very important to me. And that was the subject, primary cornerstone that I focused on in my last book, which is called Recipes for Your Perfectly Imperfect Life. And then the fourth cornerstone is spiritual growth. And that's what I define as growing awareness, connection to the true self inside of us. So it's this stable part of us, this inner resource, which is usually dormant because we identify with this primal fear. So in my life, in the way that I create my practices and what my brand is about is offerings in all of these cornerstones. So food-wise, and I focused on that, a lot in the beginning, the first 2 books, because I was, really getting my food part under control. I used to be bloated a lot. I had terrible acne. I couldn't drop the last 10 pounds. I feel like I was always trying to lose some weight. And then I really figured out to go beyond numbers because I used to be obsessed with calories and all this stuff. And so in the Beauty Detox Solution, I wrote about, really focusing on energy and digestion. Right now, like I said, I still follow all of that. I drink my hot water with lemon. I drink my glowing green smoothie almost every day. Sometimes we're traveling or whatever. And I follow those recipes. I still have the Dharma's kale salad, the original recipes. Oh my
Wow.
gosh, Lacy, like 3 times a week from that first book. But then it's like we master something, right? And then we go beyond. So we still have recipes. We have all of that. We have a 30-day healthy weight loss program that's really popular, part of Solluna. And then the second cornerstone is body. So I'm a big believer in gut health. And every day I take our 2 SBO probiotics from Solluna. I think I gave you some to try.
You did. Yes, yes. They were fantastic. I can't wait to come load up.
Oh
in
yeah,
the new
come
year
over
when I
here.
see
I'll get
you
a big
next.
bag and I'll just load you in our closet. It's one of my favorite things to do with friends. And so, then you realize, okay, we're becoming and we've become at the same time. What I mean is we have this human part of us that's stumbling along. We are embodied. We're in this human body that we need to take care of, this bodily temple. And at the same time, we have the soul. We have this true self inside of us, but we need to take care of the body. So Solluna offers these supplements. And again, my number one is the probiotic. We also have something you take in the evenings called Detoxy.
Which is, you used to be on, I remember with the book, it was like Mago Sevens. This is an even better version of those.
This is I don't say better, but this is like an elevated version, we'll say, because it goes beyond just oxygen, which is carried by magnesium. There's also the ASC2P, which is a stable form of vitamin C. And clinical research shows that the combination of oxygen and this form of vitamin C inside your body is incredibly anti-aging. And I don't just mean from a cosmetic perspective, although that too. It means that it's helping to oxygenate. It creates more efficiency in your organs. And it also gets between the old waste in your GI tract and it helps to escort it out. So all these heavy metals, all these toxins, which literally create millions of free radicals every day and age your tissues and your cells, taking this detoxy in the evening just helps to flush everything out. Again, it all works together, right? So then you're eating well, you're taking the supplements. I also have put out a yoga series, like asana series as well. So we have lots of offerings there. And then emotional well-being. And this is what I find is when people focus on one cornerstone, they obsess about, let's say, body or food, and they don't get the results. And this is what was happening with me. I was never able to really lose the weight. My body never really looked like I wanted it to. It's not that we want to go deeper and deeper and obsess more. Like maybe it's the omega-3s I'm missing. Maybe it's the riboflavin. It's that we need to go to the other cornerstones. We need to nourish ourselves more holistically. And I started doing this deep work in the emotional cornerstone. I was like, oh shit. The reason I'm bloated is because I'm not processing all these emotions. I'm pushing them down.
Yeah.
These mechanisms I learned, very early on. Inner child work became really big for me. Just journaling, introspection. What I learned, Lace, was, one thing that always used to bother me is when people would interrupt me or I give my opinion, I give this whole big thing and then they wouldn't agree. And I started to introspect, like, why does it bother me so much? It was beyond the normal, like, okay, this is annoying. And what I found was underneath that was it hit this trigger that I wasn't worthy. I wasn't good enough to be seen or to be heard. And that's why people were interrupting me. And then underneath that was the fear of not being lovable.
Yeah.
So it was like this cracking open. And once I started to learn that and learn how to really love myself, which is tied to the spiritual cornerstone, then my whole life changed. Then abundance started coming in. Then I was able to create this brand. Then my soulmate came in. And so what I realized, and now fourth cornerstone is spiritual growth, which is really where the focus of my work is today, because I think this is the key to everything, is we identify so much with this outer shell, this ego, what we look like, what we're doing, and also our behaviors. So it's hard to really love yourself if you remember all the things that you've done, the ways you've hurt people, the ways you've hurt yourself. And so again, back to this connecting deep down to this stable part of you, you realize, oh, there's this part of me that's deeper than the so-called good behavior and the bad behavior. There's a part of me that's eternal. This is the part of me that I can fall in love with. This is the part of me that I can expand out. And so through these teachings and these techniques and these very specific practices, from moving from the peripheral nervous system out here all the time into concentrating the energy in your central nervous system, working with your spine, lighting up different parts of your brain. So these ancient yogic techniques are really where they come from, the Gita and the Vedas. Then my life started to really shift, and not just in feeling more peace and bliss, but also, Lacy, very much with the food and body cornerstones. So suddenly my stomach came back. I really started to see more definition. The bloat went away, and it just became so easy to deal with food. Whereas before it was this like obsession, always thinking about what I was eating. I just felt more of this flow, this unlocking inside of myself allowed this flow in other parts. So to answer the very long answer to your question, I still take my probiotics. I meditate in the morning. I eat this way. I do journaling every day. I take the time to digest my emotions. It just becomes this whole lifestyle that keeps getting deeper and deeper.
So something that I've been really simmering on lately, I think it's where my focus is this year. I keep getting pushed in this direction of really being present and letting my thoughts go and all of that. And I finally, after doing much of the work that you're talking about as well, feel like I'm in a safe enough place to do that. I think that was the big block, right? The ego, the fear, the control. And how often do you feel that you're in that space in a day where you don't have your mind running you? You're just really, truly there.
So you said two words that I really love. Number one, simmer.
Yeah.
Simmering on this. I could just, such a beautiful visual. Lacy over there simmering. And then the second word that you said was safety. So this was a huge, huge, huge revelation for me when I talked about coming out of that really dark bottom place period into trust. And I realized that so much of my life was trying to find this safety and security. And like you said, it was in control. It was always being in long-term relationships. There was something that felt safe about that versus being on my own, even if some of the relationships were not really right. There was topics, there was articles, there were some books that were safer than others. There was all this safety around. And I will say from my heart, that, it keeps getting deeper and deeper, but something magical has happened over the past year in writing this book. And I haven't had this experience with any other book where something about, I went through thousands of pages of text and I synthesized and I was going really deep. And I've had some really incredible spiritual experiences just in the past year. One of them was walking here in the mountains near where we live. And I remember looking up at the light. And it was the first time I had this experience of feeling really the rising up of God, of spirit, like where I could feel it in every cell of my body. I could just feel this light, and I felt real safety and security. And I felt that all the ways on, the little control mechanisms, it felt so irrelevant and ridiculous. So the answer to the question is it continues, right? This human part of us, we dip in and out. But I will say that over the past year, my connection to the true self, this unshakable inner resource, this stable, this infinitely creative part of us, this part of us that is the real safety, it has strengthened so much. And I'm in that state quite a bit now where I'm just in full trust. And I'm not saying it's like, I'm not fully enlightened here. The subtitle of the book is Practical Enlightenment for Everyday Life. So I wanted it to be practical, but enlightenment isn't like, we don't have to be, Jesus, Krishna, Buddha, just getting on the path. Just starting to spend more time in these practices. The meditations I put out every week are about 7 minutes. So it's just 1 degree over, just really starting to, the energy builds over time. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, well, I don't feel safe a lot of the time, or my life isn't where I want it to be, I will share my life wasn't where I wanted it to be either, but it's this continual effort. It's, the Dharma, it's the righteous action, just showing up every day, spending time in your practices every day, your life will change. And so I look back at all the fear, all the insecurity to now, just really placing that security inside of myself, in the true self, in spirit, in God inside of me, and not in relationships, not all these things, not with husband, not with kids, but inside.
I love it. Look at Aquarians are about to throw down. I always say that when it's like, we're going to go there. It's interesting. I too have been having many of those experiences. And when I used to think of, the word that you used as well and is used often, enlightenment, it felt like such this moment that would happen to people like Eckhart Tolle, or all the ones who have had
Byron Katie.
Byron
Yeah.
Katie,
Ramana
another.
Maharshi.
Exactly. And in fact, what's so wild, I had this really deep conversation with our director of marketing on a hike a week ago. And, we were really talking about like the infinite and infinite love and, non-matter and all of this stuff. And it really had me revisit, which I do once in a while, but the power of now. Sometimes I'll revisit that. It's funny because when I very first tried to read that at a similar age, well, a bit younger than when I found your book, I remember sitting in my bath, opening it and reading it. And though I understand English, I was like, this sounds like gibberish to me. And it's funny now when I listen to it on audio, I'm like, of course, duh, whatever. It just shows consciousness and the understanding and also just growing up. But I love that it's actually so simple in a way, not simple to practice, but I love that it's not enlightenment the way that he describes it in, The Power of Now. He says it's a radiant joy of being and the deep, unshakable peace that comes with it, which is essentially what you're saying. And, I guess what I'm getting at, and I'm starting to realize in all of these practices, and as I dip my toe in more and more, or that I'm in that space more easily, I'm realizing that it isn't a mountain to climb, as it used to seem so daunting, so far away. And I guess that's what I really love about how you were just presenting that it's something that's constant. It's something that is presenting. It's something that you're in more than you used to be. And I guess I just want to share that with everybody as I'm on this journey, and certainly, somewhere that you are practicing from a lot more often as well. But another thing that I wanted to talk about and really start to go there is, what does God look and feel like to you? Because this is something that I've really been also meditating on a lot. And obviously you follow a practice that gives kind of a clear guidance of that. But just what is God to you?
So that's a big question,
It
Lace.
is. It's
I love
huge.
this.
It's
I
huge.
love this. And so one of the things that Yogananda talks about is when we are, talking about God, when we're talking about the divine, it goes beyond intellectual understanding, and it is experiential. It's something that we feel from the inside. And as he states in his commentary on the Gita, and by the way, similarly to you, I'm rereading the commentary of the Bhagavad Gita now. And the first time I did it, I read it was like 10 years ago. And wow, the difference of just really like getting it. It shows how much we change. He says in the Gita commentary that the highest intuition that a human can have is to really know who we are, to know that the true self, again, what the focus of this new book is feeling spirit move inside of you. So God isn't this like pie in the sky, like up there. We start to realize, and I get goosebumps now, that everything, every cell, every little piece of energy, every person, everything is God, is full of God, this omniscience. And so one of the things that keeps rising in me is this, I love this term rishi, the Sanskrit term, which means, the wise men in India. Rishi means seer. Right. So it's like we go beyond just seeing with the physical eyes, and we literally start to see more, we comprehend more, we intuit more out of the third eye, the Ajna chakra. So this is in the book, there's a couple chapters on meditation. We go deeper into these techniques of really getting into the third eye focus, which starts to activate the ganglion of nerves at the back of the brain around the medulla oblongata. And when we do this, we have higher knowing of God, of spirit all around. It's experiential. It comes inside of you. So again, we can't get past this. This isn't like the biohacking, I'm going to just go on the float tank for 2 minutes instead of doing the normal meditation. We can do those things. We can take plant medicine, but it doesn't replace the work.
Yeah. Agreed.
Going in and connecting. That's the real work, right? Doing the meditation practice. And so similarly to you, I do love Eckhart Tolle. I read his books. A New Earth really spoke to me. But it was like, oh, it just felt like there was this kind of high, big philosophy. But I was like, what do I do with this? And so it's so important to me to offer the practical way. So to me, the practical way is, hey, if most of our life is in ego, the five senses, again, physical eyes, we're looking out, we're on social media, we're seeing what everybody's doing, which then unfortunately often leads to comparison, contrasting, feeling not good enough, or like doing out here. We need to balance all this outward doing with these practices that focus us on the inside. So it's like we balance outer and inner, and we balance going into the interior, into the spine, into the brain, into the central nervous system, into the true self. And Yogananda calls this a yogic science, meaning if we continue to do the methodology, we do start to see results. And he urges us to test it. We know there's no blind dogma here. We're not following anything blindly. And that's what I started to do. I started to really test things, and I started to see patterns emerge in my life. Like when I was coming back from backpacking and I was broke and I was doing these teachings, and I started to see, oh, wow, it's like this flow. All I did was tell my yoga students about my blog. I didn't know anything about SEO or marketing back then.
Yeah.
And it was starting to spread throughout New York City. And then the celebrities were just coming in. And it really came from following these techniques and these teachings. And so, when you ask me, about God, it's like, God is, this love. And I also think, at least one thing this past trip in Hawaii, the one thing I realized is we keep going deeper and deeper. So it's just about getting on the path. Like we said, it's not going to come all at once. But I felt like I went through this rebirth where I kind of just like went into this hole, and I emerged with my heart expanded. So I think the spiritual path is nonlinear as well. I think we're like, oh, wow. And then for me, it's like you go into this chrysalis stage, and then the heart gets bigger and bigger. And it's this like unconditional love, the love of Christ, the love of Krishna. When you do these practices and you're tuning into source, that's the energy that you feel. That's when you see God in every person. You see the light in their eyes. You see that we're not so separated. You see that we are not so different. We are, on the surface different, but inside we all come from source.
You just nailed it. And why I wanted to ask that question is because I am just now, I've always intellectually understood that, but I'm just now starting to know, feel, and see that. It was even just, I had this experience, I think it was about 3 days ago, where I was just in stillness, like you're talking about. And I was like, oh, this is fine, being in stillness. And I do that often, just not having my thoughts getting carried away and just being present. But it's when I tapped into my heart, I went, this is God. This is God. I am connected.
Oh, yeah. Right here, right now.
Yes. And I think that was so huge. Obviously, your book, I think, covers this so beautifully and accessing it so beautifully. And myself personally, when saying that word, God, it's like, it's imagery of things we've been programmed, or someone in the sky, or, all that stuff. And I'm just now really digesting, whoa, this is what true connectedness is. This is what that I've been practicing forever. Vedic meditation has been leading to. I'm just now clicking it. So I really love the way that you describe that.
To me, it almost feels like, for many of us, this cleansing, this rebirth of our idea of God, this word, this concept. So I grew up Catholic, and my mother's from the Philippines, which is a very Catholic country. So it was a big part of my life growing up, in the sense that every Sunday, we got in the car, we went to church, I did Sunday school. And I remember very young hearing about these stories about Jesus and feeling that love and feeling really connected to Jesus.
Me too. Me too.
But I did not feel connected to the church, And when I went to college, I went to Georgetown, which is actually a Jesuit college. I didn't go to church anymore. I just stopped, and I didn't know what to do anymore because I didn't connect with the church, but I did feel this connection. So it's when I started backpacking, and, I was on the road for 3 years. I did it really inexpensively. It just kept going and going. I bought, one of those around the world tickets, and I ended up doing 3 loops around the world to over 50 countries. And the first time I went to India, I was like, what? I was there for 3 months, and then I circled back, and I was there for another extended period. But it's, first I was confused because then I started learning about this yogic philosophy and Vedic philosophy. And I was like, wait, does this mean I'm Hindu? Does this
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
not like, I don't believe it. Like, I don't know what this means. And then you realize, and this is why I fell in love with Yogananda so much and why I really want to highlight his teachings, which are so useful and applicable. He is the one, like I said, who brought yoga to the West. He is the one that on the altar put Jesus and Krishna and saying, what I'm talking about here goes beyond religion. It goes beyond, these dogmatic ideas. It goes beyond form. There are unifying principles. There's oneness. There's energy that runs through everything. The spirit runs through everything. And so you can be Catholic, you can be a Jew, you can be Muslim, or none of those things, and follow these teachings and learn to meditate in this really effective way and to do these practices. And so that really resonated with me because I realized I could love God, I could love Jesus. As I got to learn about these yogis, I love them too. And it's not this or that, black or white, good, bad, all or nothing. The separatism that comes around a lot with religion, it was like, no, this is for everybody. This is allness. This is eternal, unconditional love. And wow. First, it changes your relationship with yourself. Like I said, I started to learn about true self-love because it was so hard to love myself if you're trying to love the ego with the unstable behaviors and the ups and downs. Oh, I have to say, Lace, one of the my favorite chapters in the book is called You Are Whole. And there's this practice that I started doing years ago. And it was where you sit, preferably after meditation where you're a little bit less reactive. And then on a piece of paper, you draw the sun and then you write all your sun qualities. So all the things you like to share about yourself, right? Like I'm thoughtful, I'm a good friend, blah, blah, blah. And then you write your lunar qualities. It's not so linear as this, but this is, the symbology we're using here. So the things that, you exhibit sometimes, but you don't really want to share so that you can be judgmental, let's say, or you can be exclusive or snippy or petty or whatever it is. And so what happens is you look at the two lists side by side and you just watch, you just witness the reaction of your ego, which will have a reaction. Your heart may start to beat. You may start to justify it. Well, I'm only this way when other people are like this. You just start to feel all the energies come up. So you just let them come up and then you let them fall, the rising and the falling. You just let all of those reactions come. And then you get to this place, and the practice is a lot more in depth than this in the book. But basically you get to this place where you look at them side by side. You get to this place of neutrality. And then you connect underneath. What is underneath the behavior? The behaviors all come from the wounded ego. So the more we connect to this stable part of us, that's the part we can really love, the true self, spirit inside of us. Yes, over time, that true self expands so much that our behaviors tend to align more and more with that heart energy. But in the beginning, and of course, as we're stumbling along, still becoming, we forgive ourselves. We learn the lessons. We clean things up. We apologize when we need to. We're not going to just pretend that we didn't do stuff, but we don't hold on. We don't hold on to this heaviness of shame. So for me, that was a big thing. Learning to love the self is the true self, not the ego. And so it's practices like this that allow us to unpack that and keep going deeper.
And to sign off with, because this is so beautiful and everybody's obviously running out now to get your book, You're More Than What You Think You Are. Give us a practical way that you move through fear. So I have two of these questions for you. The first will be fear.
So this is a really big one. Fear is actually the first chapter in the book. Yogananda says there's 26 soul qualities we must develop as humans in order to reach our fullest potential. And fearlessness is number one. Because if you don't get past fear, you're not getting on the path in the first place, right?
Yeah.
We don't have the impetus. We don't have the, we don't focus on the practices, or we don't dare to dream what we want because we are so full of fear. So there's a lot I have to say about fear. But what I will say is that this is something you can start to do today, moment to moment. When something comes up, when you start to have a thought, when you see something on social media that triggers you, or you're just moving through your day, you check in constantly. And this was a game changer for me. I check in to my heart, right? Not the mind. The monkey mind can spin us in many different directions. I would check into my heart and you ask yourself this one question: am I in true self or am I in ego? And if your heart feels expansive, if you feel open, if you feel love, you are in the true self. If you're feeling constricted in any way, and you will literally, when you start to do this practice, you can tune in and you can feel it as a physicality. If you feel constricted or, Lace, just kind of like, that ugh feeling, or, sometimes for me, it's this tightening that I get around my stomach or my belly or whatever it is. If you feel that, you know that you are in ego, and that's where fear lives. So it's moment to moment. Am I in true self or am I in ego? And if you feel that you are an ego in that moment, it's okay. You don't beat yourself up, but you make a shift. And it can be as simple as closing your eyes, taking 3 deep belly breaths, or feeling the bottoms of your feet, bringing yourself to this moment, right? We want to come back to presence, which is a word you used earlier on. Or, many practices that I share in the book to shift out of fear, but we can't move forward. We can't make any of those shifts unless we know we're in fear in the first place. Fear speaks from your mouth if you're speaking in judgment, or you're tearing someone down, or you're criticizing, or you're doing all these things. That's not really who you are. That's just the fearful ego. So moment to moment, we just keep checking in. And when we're in our hearts, we know that we're in this expanded place, and this is where abundance lives. This is where magnetism lives. This is where love lives and true beauty. And so we just keep checking in, dialing in, doing the practices, and then we move forward more and more in that loving place, becomes our way of being. And I can say from personal experience, someone that had a lot of fear into moving into more expansion, it is possible for every single one of us. It is our true nature.
Love it. And what about, and I think this is probably one that's really potent at the top of the year, what about how do you move through when you're stuck in, say, a situation that's not serving you and your true self is telling you something else is better or the right path? Just how do you move through stuckness into unstuck?
Yes. So stuckness in all the ways it can be, let's say, in a relationship that's not really serving you anymore, or tough one for me. Maybe you've dealt with this too, Lacy, is when people. Sometimes people on your team don't really work out. It's really hard for me to let go of people, but like, okay, this isn't exactly aligned, or maybe you're in a job that doesn't feel aligned, or whatever it is. So the first thing is to recognize that there is truth coming inside of you, especially if it is arising over and over again. So what I like to do is, first of all, I meditate. I even submit a meditation in the middle of the day, or, feel stuck. So you meditate, you clear, you let the thoughts start to settle down, you recenter, you concentrate your energy inside. And then it is the potent space after meditation, when I get out my journal and I write the question, or you think to yourself, what do I do about this situation? How do I move forward? What is the righteous path for me to take? And it doesn't, it can't come from the mind. It comes from inside of you. So again, always important to meditate in this really effective way. Something like the practical enlightenment meditations I offer, or something that's not just relaxing you, but actually pulling you into union, into that divine union. And so recognizing that you're stuck is okay. It's like this surrender, like I'm crying out for help. I'm open to all the solutions and all the different ideas. So then you go into center, you get out of the ego, you go deeper, you dive deeper. And what I find is afterwards, just allowing, this is where we can all channel, just getting out your notebook, asking the question, asking it up to spirit, breathing into it. And so that's the way, for me, when I was, all this fear about leaving my relationship before, I was like, oh God, I never thought I was going to be a single mom. This is not how I thought my life was going to go out. But I would meditate. I felt really stuck. And it just came from my heart. You have to leave. You have to go. And it was real scary, Lace. I was like, oh man, this is happening. But you start to trust. The more we go into that inner place, the more we trust that there is something more. There's a deeper creative energy all around us, this intelligence that we are cared for. We are going to be okay, but we have to release into that unknown, into that blackness, the darkness, so to speak, because on the other side is incredible light. So for me, in the potent space afterwards is when I would ask the questions about any situation and I would get the answers. There's also a practice in the fearlessness chapter, which I won't spend too much time on now, but it's fear, truth, wisdom practice. That's a really great one for going into your gut and getting the answers. But it's always like, when we're stuck, you don't just try to push through, you don't try to muscle it, but you take that sacred pause, you take the stillness, and you start to trust more and more that the answers come from inside of you, and they are there.
Love it. Wow. We could talk and talk and talk and talk, but I want to be respectful of your time. And if you don't mind sharing one more time your book, where we can find your amazing products, and then meditations as well.
Awesome, love. Thank you so much for being with me today. I loved our conversation as well. So yeah, the book is called You Are More Than You Think You Are, Practical Enlightenment for Everyday Life. And you can get it now. Just came out wherever books are sold, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. All the information on me, the Feel Good podcast, our Practical Enlightenment meditations and so on products is at mysolluna.com. That's SOLLUNA.com.
And for all of us who are just obsessed with your family life, we can find you on Instagram. Just under your name, right? I believe that's what your handle is.
Yes, @ Kimberly Snyder. And I do love sharing the family. It's fun, isn't it?
Well, it's beautiful too that you're so open in sharing your family, because it really is your existence throughout the day. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. It's just what you're up to all day long. And I think that that's really special. It's so special.
Thank you, my love.
It was so good to talk to you.
I love you so much.
You too. Thank you so much for tuning into the episode, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, we did. And in case you're not totally ready to join the pathway yet, I wanted to share a few of our free offerings that I'll often suggest to people as a little bit of a blueprint to get them started on their manifestation journey. The first place I like to direct people completely for free is the motivation. You can see it linked below or on our homepage as our testimony library. And it's categorized by different subjects, whether you're calling in career, money, love, wellness, and much more. When you're reading about a member's experience of what they manifested, you're actually seeing to believe and showing your subconscious that that very thing is possible for you. The second place I like to direct people is to the free clarity exercise, which is also linked below. In it, you get to try our own unique hypnosis process, learn about the science, and some journaling prompts. And the best part about this, you'll get a tiny taste of what it's like to go into your hypnotic state, bring your subconscious forward, and create new neural pathways while receiving clarity. And the third thing, if you haven't listened to it on this podcast yet, please go back to the episode titled Manifestation 101, where you'll learn the basics of neural manifestation to truly understand this process. So go ahead and check out those free resources, the motivation, the free clarity exercise, and the episode Manifestation 101, all linked below. And in an effort to make sure to have representation in this process series, go ahead and submit any process testimonials you have, especially to our LGBTQ+ community, our BIPOC, as well as the Ys, which is anyone in the community who is 45 and over. All right, we'll be back next week.